Hello everyone, I am Dr. Ramesh Gumasa, working as Assistant Professor in the Department of Civil Engineering at SR University, Warangal. So in the previous lecture, we discussed about energy sources, types of energy sources, classification, followed by the renewable energy sources and non-renewable energy sources, right? So in this lecture, we'll discuss sustainable development and threats to the sustainability and the green building concept. Okay. So modern society is developing rapidly due to the industrialization, urbanization and technological advancement. Although development improves human life, it also creates serious environmental problems like pollution, climatic change, deforestation and depletion of natural resources. Today, the world is facing a major challenge: how to continue development without destroying the environment, right? So today our world is facing so much of challenges, how to continue the development without compromising the future generation, right, without destroying the environment. So sustainable development which provides the solution, right? So to solve this kind of problem, sustainable development is required. So which balance the ecosystem growth like in terms of economic protection and social welfare. Okay, so this will be balance economic growth, environmental protection as well as social welfare. So we will also study green building concept in this lecture, so which are an important part of sustainable construction and environmental conservation. Okay, so from this slide you can see that, so because most of the issues are coming to the picture because of rapid urbanization due to the industrialization. So natural resources are depleted because of the overuse. So environment is slowly degrading because of these issues. So sustainable development, which is required to balance the development as well as to protect the environment, right? So green technologies like green building concept and sustainable practices, which are crucial to achieve sustainability. So you can also see, so the three pillars of sustainability like in terms of ecology, economy and social. Okay, so that this framework will show that reliable, strong and long-term framework for achieving the sustainability. So the concept of sustainable development. Sustainable development means development that satisfies present needs without affecting the ability of future generation satisfaction. Right. So in terms of whatever the needs of present which are not compromising for future needs. So this is the definition which was introduced in the 1987, right? So Brundtland Commission report, which is introduced by the definition of sustainability. So the main idea you can see development as well as environmental protection and social welfare. Okay, the concept of sustainability which combines three major aspects in terms of economic development and environmental protection followed by the social welfare. Okay, so the main idea is that development should not occur at the cost of environmental destruction. Okay, industries, cities, transportation systems and infrastructure should be developed in a way that we can conserve natural resources and maintains ecological balance. Right. So sustainable development which promotes responsible use in terms of resources so that future generations can also enjoy a healthy environment and sufficient natural resources. So the need of sustainable development. Sustainable development has become necessary because natural resources are limited and environmental degradation is increasing continuously in the day by day. So human population growth and industrial activities which are increasing. So for especially for water, energy, food, land and other raw materials like, so which are increasing day by day. So at the same time, environmental problems like air pollution, water pollution, global warming, which is also increasing, right? Which is also affecting on biodiversity loss. So the biodiversity loss become increasing more severe. So if the resources are used irresponsibly, so future generation may face serious shortages, right? Therefore, development must occur carefully and scientifically. So development occurs by carefully as well as scientifically. So sustainable development which ensures that economic growth which will take place without demanding the ecosystem and without damaging the ecosystem and natural resources. Right. So the economic growth will take a place but it will not disturb the ecosystem and natural resources. Right. So the sustainable development is necessary because of natural resources which are limited and environment pollution is increasing in the day by day and climate change also increasing. So population growth increasing. So there is shortage of resources and which is affecting on biodiversity loss. So there is a loss of resources for future generation. So for this we require sustainable development so that we can develop as well as we cannot damage or disturb the environment. So the main objectives of sustainable development are conservation of natural resources to achieve long-term environmental and economic stability. So conservation of natural resources which are important and environmental protection, sustainable utilization of resources and reduction in pollution in terms of air, water and soil and to reduce this kind of pollution so that it will not much affect on our environment. Economic growth and social welfare which are the key objectives in the sustainable development and which will improve our quality of life so that long-term ecological balance will be maintained in our environment, right? So the main objectives of the sustainable development is to achieve long-term environmental as well as economical stability. Okay, so sustainable development which also aims to reduce poverty and improves social welfare while maintaining environmental quality, right? So it encourages efficient resource use and renewable energy recycling and pollution control, right? These are the main objectives of sustainable development. So the pillars of sustainable development, you can see from this figure, there are three main pillars in the sustainable development. So first one is environmental sustainability and second one is economical sustainability and last one is social sustainability. Okay, so these are the primary important main pillars of sustainability. So the first pillar is environmental sustainability which focusing on protecting the ecosystems, right? Which focusing on protecting the ecosystems, forest, biodiversity, water resources, air quality, right? And the second system like economic sustainability, so which promotes economic growth without causing excessive resource depletion or environmental damage, right? The second pillar which is economic sustainability which promotes the economic growth without causing effect on depletion of environmental damage. And the last pillar is social sustainability, which includes human welfare, education, health quality, and quality of life. Right. So all these pillars are interconnected to each other. If one pillar becomes weak, sustainable development cannot be achieved properly. Right. Because all pillars are interconnected to each other. So all pillars must remain balanced That is the key idea of sustainable development. So the principles of sustainable development. Sustainable development follows several important principles. So one important principle is conservation of ecosystems. Natural ecosystem must be protected because they support biodiversity and ecological balance. Another principle is sustainable resource utilization. Resources should be used effectively without wastage. Right? Resources should be efficiently used without any wastage. And next one is intergenerational equity, which is also important, meaning that present generation should not exploit resources excessively and which creates problems for future generations, right? And other principles like pollution prevention, public participation, efficient energy utilization, waste reduction, recycling. So these are the principles which guides governments, industries, and individuals towards towards sustainable practices. So that these resources should be used responsibly and effectively to achieve sustainable development. So these are the key major principles of sustainable development. So intergenerational equity, which means fairness between present and future generations. Fairness between present and future generations. So present generation must use resources responsibly so that future generation can also meet their needs. Right? Future generation also can use resources. For example, excessive groundwater extraction in the today, which can create severe water scarcity in the future, right? Similarly, uncontrolled deforestation, which may permanently destroy the biodiversity and ecosystem, right? Because of the excessive deforestation, which destruct the biodiversity and ecology functioning, like ecosystem functioning. And intergenerational equity, which promotes long-term thinking and responsible environmental management, so that it reminds society that natural resources are not unlimited. Okay, natural resources are not unlimited. Okay, so excessive usage is not good for sustainable practices. Sustainable resource management. Sustainable resource management means careful and efficient use of natural resources to ensure that long-term availability for future generations. Like for example, rainwater harvesting, which helps to conserve water resources, while forest afforestation, which helps to restore forest ecosystem, right? So the main objective is to prevent overexploitation and maintain ecological balance, right? So water conservation, forest conservation, soil conservation, energy conservation, sustainable agriculture. So these all are practices which ensure that long-term availability of natural resources for the future generations so that we can maintain ecological balance. So what are the threats to the sustainability? So from this figure you can clearly see that there are different varieties and different types of threats to the sustainability. So several human activities which are threatened sustainability today. So these activities damage the ecosystem and reducing the biodiversity and increasing the pollution and creates environmental imbalance, right? So like population explosion, deforestation, pollution, climate change, resource depletion, urbanization, industrialization, and overconsumption of resources. So these are the major threats which creates environmental imbalance. So if these threats continue without any control, sustainable development will become very difficult to achieve, right? So we cannot achieve sustainable development without controlling these kind of issues, right? So the key point is unsustainable activities damage the ecosystem as well as the human health, and which is directly affecting on sustainability. Population growth, rapid population growth which creates high pressure on natural resources as well as environmental system. Right? How can you think? As population increases, demand for food, water, energy, transportation and housing which is also increases. This leads to increased resources consumption and waste generation. Right? As the population increases, the demand also increases in terms of food, water, energy, transportation, etc. This leads to increase of energy, resource consumption, so that generation of wastage will be more. So which is also affecting on sustainability. Urban areas which expand rapidly, forests are cleared for the settlements, and natural habitats are destroyed. So population growth which are directly affects the environmental sustainability as well as resource availability, right? So because of this food, water, energy and natural resources, waste generation and expansion in terms of urban area and destruction in the habitats, which all are creates a problem in the environmental sustainability. So we need to prevent this kind of issues to achieve the sustainability for future generation. So deforestation is one of the issue in the sustainability. So deforestation, which means large scale removal of forest for agriculture, industries, roads and urban development. Right, large scale removal of forest. Forests are extremely important because they regulate climate, they conserve biodiversity and prevent soil erosion and maintains water cycle. Right? Because of over removal of this forest, which is effect on our climatic conditions, like so that it is also directly affecting on sustainability. So you can also see some of the effects because of this deforestation. So the continuous deforestation which will weaken the ecological stability, right, and increasing the environmental problems like in terms of loss of biodiversity, soil erosion, and which will affect on precipitation or rainfall and imbalance in the climate and destruction of some habitats, right? Because of the deforestation, the entire climate will be changed. So forests are essential for ecological stability to achieve sustainability. And next one is related to the pollution. Pollution is one of the biggest threat to the sustainability, right? Pollution which affect the human health, ecosystem climates, like ecosystems, climate and biodiversity, right? So industries will release some emission, like vehicles also release some exhaust gases, plastic which generate waste and untreated sewage which are major pollution sources, right? So that sustainable development which requires effective pollution control through a cleaner technologies, waste management and environmental regulations, so that we can control pollution in the environment, so that we can achieve sustainability. So you can see the types of pollutions. There are mainly four types: air, water, soil and noise. So which is affecting on human health, ecosystem, climatic change and biodiversity loss. To achieve sustainability development, which we require to control this kind of pollution in the environment. So the main causes of climatic change because of the greenhouse gas emissions, fossil fuel consumption and deforestation, right? Climate change which is mainly caused by the greenhouse gas emissions, especially from the industries, transportation, power plants, and deforestation. So climate change, which threatens the water resources, biodiversity, food security, and human health. So sustainable development, which is required, so reduction of greenhouse gases emissions and increasing the use of renewable energy, right? So climate change which threaten the sustainability in a global way. So we need to control these kind of causes and effects so that we can achieve the sustainability. Resource depletion, so which means excessive use of natural resources beyond the regeneration capacity, right? When we resources are consumed faster, so natural availability of resources will be less, which will create economical instability and which will also affect on environmental degradation, right? Sustainable resource management is necessary to prevent long-term resources shortage, right? So resource depletion, which plays a crucial role in the sustainability because of excessive use of these resources. So it will affect on future generation. Like the example, you can see the conventional materials like fossil fuel depletion, groundwater depletion, and forest destruction. So which will ultimately affect on resource scarcity, economic instability in the environment, and environmental degradation in the environment, right? So which will directly affecting on the country, right? So urbanization and industrialization. Urbanization and industrialization are important for economic development, but unplanned growth which will create environmental stress, right? So because of increased pollution, habitat fragmentation, traffic congestion, waste generation, resource overconsumption, which will create problems to the sustainability, like in terms of ecosystem. Okay, so which will create the environmental problems. So rapid urban expansion, which often destroys agricultural land and forest. Industries also generate air and water pollution. So if environmental regulations are not properly followed, so which will crucially and critically affecting on sustainability. Right. We need to control these kind of problems. So green building concept. So green buildings are structures which are designed to minimize environmental impact and improve resource efficiency. Right. So the main goal is to reduce the environmental footprint as well as improving the human comfort and building performance. You can see the typical example of green building. So green buildings which are becoming increasingly important in sustainable urban development, right? So green buildings are structure which are designed to reducing the environmental impact and improving the resource efficiency, right? So the focusing areas for the green buildings are energy efficiency, water conservation, sustainable materials, indoor environmental quality, right? So that we can reduce environmental footprint of the buildings, right? Compared to the conventional buildings, we can control the carbon emissions for the from with the help of green building, right? So that we can achieve sustainability. I need of green buildings. The buildings consumes large amount of energy, right? In terms of water and the construction of materials. Conventional building also generate waste and pollution. They improve sustainability and reduces pressure on natural resources, right? Because of these green buildings, which improves the sustainability and reducing the pressure on natural resources. So green buildings are reduces the resource consumption, which will reducing the resource consumption and which will improving the environmental sustainability. So the operating cost will be lower, right? So that the construction sector, which is contributing higher amount of carbon emission, by using green buildings, we can play an important role to develop a to develop sustainability in the environment, right? So instead of going for conventional buildings, if we use green buildings, so that we can achieve sustainability, right? We can save our resources efficiently, and we can control our carbon emission, so that we can achieve sustainability. So major features in the green buildings are energy efficiency and related to the natural ventilation, rainwater harvesting, solar energy utilization, waste recycling systems, and use of eco-friendly materials, efficient water management. Okay, so these are the features which reduces resource consumption and improves environmental performance of buildings, right? So energy efficiency in green buildings. So there are different methods so that we can use to improve our performance of energy efficiency, like by using LED lighting, solar panels, energy efficient appliances, thermal insulations, and smart energy systems, right? So the benefits are, you can see, we can by using LED lights and solar panels, we can reduce the consumption of electricity, and by using energy efficient application and smart energy systems, we can also lower greenhouse gas emissions and reducing the operating cost, right? And other materials, like other methods are, you can see, use of eco-friendly materials like recycled materials like steel, fly ash material, bamboo, recycled material like wood, and low VOC paints, right? So we can use for buildings. So the advantages are, so we are controlling the environmental pollution and carbon footprint, and we are efficiently using the resources, like we are using resource conservation also, right? Benefits of green buildings. So the main benefits of green buildings are, first one is environmental benefits, second is economic benefits, and last is social benefits. So first one is environmental benefits, which includes reducing the pollution like air, water, soil pollution. If we control pollution, we can control the emissions, so that there is no much change of in the climate, like we can control greenhouse gas emissions. And energy conservation, if we use natural resources, so we can use conventional materials also for the future generation, like we are conserving our energy based on the natural resources. And water conservation, by using some rainwater harvesting, so that we can store water for future use. And reducing the waste generation, we control the wastage, we can use this material for other purposes, right? Like future generation also. Next one is economic benefits. So which is nothing but in terms of maintaining cost, like low maintaining cost, and reducing the uh, electric charges and other utility bills, right? So that we can control our economy. We can also save our economy. And last one is social benefits. So which is in terms of improving the occupant health, like human health and comfort. Okay, these are the primary benefits from the green buildings. So green buildings rating system, you can see, to evaluate environmental performance of the buildings, several green buildings rating systems are used. Okay, so there are mainly different types of green building rating system. You can see LEED, GRIHA, and IGBC. So these rating systems will be given for the building based on the several parameters, right? So these systems which can assess the buildings based on the energy efficiency, water conservation, and materials for indoor environmental quality, and sustainability performance, right? Based on these parameters, the rating system will be given by the body, right? So based on that, so whether the building is green or not, which is given by this body, right? IGBC, GRIHA and LEED, these are the organizations which are working on green rating system, so that we can evaluate environmental performance of building. So sustainable development goals, the United Nations which introduces sustainable development goals in year of 2015. So these goals provides a global framework for sustainable development. So the SDGs, which encourages countries to work together towards environmental protection and sustainable growth, right? In terms of affordable and clean energy, sustainable cities, smart cities, and communities, climate action, clean water, and sanitation, etc. Right? So the main importance is global framework for sustainable future. So the sustainable development which helps to protect the natural resources and to maintain ecological balance, to reduce the environmental degradation, so that we can ultimately improve our quality of life, which will support for future generation, right? So the key idea from this lecture is sustainability, which is essential for long term human survival, right? Long term human survival. So the summary from this lecture is sustainable development which balances economic growth as well as it will protect the environment. So the major threats for the sustainability, which includes pollution, climatic change, deforestation and resource depletion. So we need to shift from conventional to uh, nature based solution like green building concept, right? Green buildings which reduce environmental impact through the effective resource use, right? So that we can achieve sustainability by using this kind of sustainable practices. So we can achieve sustainability for our, so that we can give our we can use resources efficiently, so that there is no shortage of resources for future generation, right? So that environment also protected, so there is no issues in the climatic actions, etc. So that will achieve sustainability, right? So this is the summary of today's lecture. Thank you.